The wrong smile on live TV. The studio lights shimmered like 1,000 tiny suns. The crowd clapped on cue, the host's grin wide and polished, rehearsed like every other night. But tonight wasn't like every other night. Keanu Reeves sat quietly on the guest chair, dressed simply in a black suit, worn-out shoes barely visible under the desk. The makeup girl had tried covering the little scar on his cheek, but he asked her not to. He didn't care about looking perfect. He wasn't here to impress. He never was. The show had just come back from a commercial break. The host leaned forward, fake chuckle bubbling up as he said, "So, Keanu, there's been a lot of talk online about something you always wear, that little cross necklace." He paused for a laugh. "What's the deal? Are you trying to tell us you're the next pope?" The audience laughed, some of them uneasily. It was the kind of joke that wasn't really a joke. It had an edge. Keanu didn't laugh. He blinked slowly, the silence stretching just long enough to make the host fidget. Then he spoke, voice calm, warm, like an old book read aloud. "This necklace belonged to my mother. She gave it to me before she passed away. It reminds me to be kind, even when people forget how to be." The laughter died. The host shifted uncomfortably in his chair, trying to regain the rhythm. "Ah, wow. Sorry, man, didn't mean to. Just having a little fun." Keanu offered a soft smile, but his eyes didn't match it. They stayed serious, heavy with something unseen, something old. "You don't have to be sorry. Not to me. Just maybe be careful who you laugh at next time." The air shifted. Something real had entered the room, too real for television. The director behind the camera made wild signals to move on, and the host quickly shifted topics, but the energy in the studio had changed. The audience watched Keanu closer now. Not just as an actor, as a man. After the show ended, Keanu quietly thanked the crew, shook hands with the host, and left through the back door into the night. No limousines, no fans, just the city breathing around him. As he walked through the quiet street, he passed a homeless man sitting on the sidewalk, shivering under a thin blanket. Keanu stopped. He crouched down, took off his coat, and wrapped it around the man's shoulders. The man looked up, surprised. "You're Keanu?" Keanu just smiled. "Not tonight. Tonight I'm just someone who noticed." As he walked away, the man stared at the cross necklace glinting under the streetlight. He didn't know why, but something about it made him feel less alone. Across town, in a luxury apartment, the host rewatched the episode. He frowned as he reached the part with the necklace. Something tugged at his gut. Guilt, regret, maybe both. His phone buzzed, comments flooding in. Did he really mock Keanu's mom's necklace? That cross meant something. The host was way out of line. Keanu handled it with so much grace. This is why people love him. He's real. For the first time in years, the host didn't feel like smiling. Meanwhile, in a small church in Los Angeles, a young girl named Sarah, barely 12, watched the same clip on her cracked tablet. She lived in the shelter across the street. She touched the chain around her neck, a tiny plastic cross her mother had given her before she disappeared. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes, not because she was sad, but because someone out there, someone famous, someone like Keanu Reeves, wore a cross like hers, and wasn't ashamed of it. That night she wrote him a letter. She didn't know where to send it. She just wrote, "Dear Mr. Keanu Reeves, thank you for not laughing. I don't feel so alone now." She tucked it into her Bible, the one she read when the world got too loud. Back in his modest home, Keanu sat by a window. He stared at the necklace in his palm. It was old, worn at the edges. He remembered his mother's voice, faint now, but never gone. "This cross isn't to tell others what you believe. It's to remind you who you are." His phone buzzed. An unknown number, a video link from someone in the studio crew. It was a behind-the-scenes clip. In the video, the host was seen laughing after the show, mocking the necklace again. "Did you see his face when I said that? Priceless. People are too soft these days." The laughter in the room was cold. Keanu watched it twice. Then he deleted the clip. He didn't need to respond with anger. The world would answer that on its own. But he made a decision that night. He wasn't going to let that moment be the end of the story. He was going to return to that show. Not for revenge, but for something far more powerful. Something that would shake the studio far more than any insult ever could. And as he closed the curtain, moonlight reflecting off the tiny cross, one thought echoed in his heart. Kindness isn't weakness, and silence isn't surrender. Letters the world tried to hide. The days passed quietly, but the ripples from that single TV moment began to spread wider than anyone expected. The clip of Keanu's soft but firm response to the mocking joke had gone viral. Not because it was loud, but because it was human. It wasn't drama. It was something deeper. People didn't scroll past it. They watched. They listened. They felt it. Keanu had returned to his quiet routines, morning tea in a small downtown cafe, riding his motorcycle without an entourage, reading old books with folded corners. But something had begun to shift in the spaces around him. Strangers, who once looked away, now met his eyes. Some simply nodded with a kind of silent respect. Others approached slowly, as if they were carrying something fragile. One of them was a middle-aged woman named Lucinda. She worked the early shift at the cafe. One morning, her hands trembled slightly as she poured him a cup. When she placed it in front of him, she spoke in a low voice. "I saw the show," she said, eyes not quite meeting his. "My son, he used to wear a necklace like yours, before the accident." She paused. "Thank you for not laughing. People laugh too easily these days." Keanu looked at her. No words needed, just a gentle nod. She smiled, for the first time in weeks, then turned to serve another customer, shoulders straighter. Meanwhile, deep in a corner of the television network's building, a junior producer named Jordan stared at his email inbox. It was overflowing. Not with complaints, though there were plenty, but with something he hadn't expected. Handwritten letters, hundreds of them. Someone had shared the studio's address on social media, and fans, strangers, even children, had started mailing letters addressed to Keanu. Not fan mail, not celebrity worship. Stories. Stories of pain, of loss, of faith. Stories connected by that one small symbol, the cross around Keanu's neck. Jordan felt something stir inside him as he read one letter from a man who had lost his wife and kept her cross necklace hidden for years, ashamed of his grief. Another came from a young boy who wrote about being bullied at school for wearing a necklace his grandmother gave him. Until he saw Keanu on TV, Jordan printed 10 letters. Then 20 more. Then he walked straight into the office of the head producer. "We need to read these on air," he said. The producer laughed. "What, sympathy mail? That's not ratings." Jordan didn't argue. He just placed the stack on the desk. "Read 3. If you feel nothing, I'll drop it." The producer rolled his eyes but picked up a letter anyway. By the time he read the third, his jaw had tightened. He didn't say a word, just nodded. But something was happening. Outside the network, too. Sarah, the little girl from the shelter, was still writing letters to Keanu. She didn't know if they'd ever reach him, so she left them folded inside the church's prayer book. Every Sunday, she'd write another. Small hands, careful words. One line always stayed the same. "Thank you for reminding me it's okay to believe in something, even when the world laughs," the priest at the church noticed. He read one of her letters by accident and was so moved he made photocopies, slipping them into the pews. By the end of the week, people were talking, not about the show, about the moment. Back at Keanu's house, his manager knocked on the door holding a box. "You've been getting mail," he said. "Real mail, not fan club junk. This is different." Keanu opened it slowly. He sat on the floor as he read through letter after letter. No flash, no headlines, just truth. He read them through the night. Some made him cry. Others made him sit still for long minutes, staring at nothing, feeling everything. But one letter stopped him completely. It was from an elderly woman in Boston. She was dying. Her handwriting was shaky. "My son used to mock my necklace when he was younger. He said faith was weak. I stopped wearing it. I wish I hadn't. Your silence on that stage, it said what I couldn't. Thank you. I've put mine back on. Not for others. For me." Keanu stared at the final line. His fingers tightened around his own necklace, and that was when he made a decision. He wasn't going to stay silent anymore. He called Jordan, the junior producer. He didn't go through managers. He dialed him directly. "I want to come back," Keanu said. Jordan almost dropped his phone. "You're serious?" "Yes," Keanu said simply. "But only if it's not about me. It's about the people." Jordan knew what he meant. Not a performance, not a segment, a moment, something real. They set the date. What none of them knew was that the host, the one who had made the joke, was in the middle of a very different storm. The network had received private recordings. A clip of him mocking faith behind the scenes had leaked. Sponsors were nervous. Viewers were furious. He was being asked to issue an apology, but the host wasn't ready. He was used to being untouchable. "Why are people freaking out over a necklace?" he yelled one night to his assistant. The assistant, quiet and soft-spoken, finally spoke back. "Maybe it's not the necklace. Maybe it's what it meant. To him. To them." The host didn't respond. But that night, he couldn't sleep. A day before the new show was scheduled, Jordan called Keanu. "We've been flooded. This isn't just a comeback, man. This is going to be something else." Keanu looked out his window, the city glowing in silence. "Then let's make sure we honor that," he said. But in the crowd waiting outside the studio, someone new had appeared, a man in a black hoodie, eyes sharp, expression unreadable. He held a camera. He wasn't a fan. He wasn't press. He had a past with Keanu, one nobody knew, and he wasn't here for inspiration. He was here for truth. The weight of silence, the cost of truth. The sun hadn't yet risen over the city, but the line outside the studio was already stretching down the block. People of all ages stood bundled in coats, some holding candles, others quietly clutching, small crosses in their hands or around their necks. There was no shouting, no signs, no chants, only stillness, like a quiet breath held between two beats of a heart. A reverence not for celebrity, but for something deeper, dignity, memory, and unspoken wounds that somehow found healing in one man's calm answer to a cruel joke. Inside, the network buzzed with unusual tension. Interns moved faster than normal. Executives barked into phones, and security paced the hallways with more alert eyes. A rare moment had arrived, one that nobody could script and nobody could control. Keanu Reeves sat alone in his green room. No stylists, no handlers, just him and a small wooden box he'd brought with him. He hadn't opened it in years. It was hand-carved, edges worn soft by time. Inside were folded photographs, black and white snapshots of his mother, younger than he'd ever known her. She wore the same necklace, the one now resting gently on his chest. He picked up one photo where she stood in front of a church, arms wide open, laughing with her eyes. He closed the box slowly and whispered, "I hope you're watching." Jordan, the young producer, knocked lightly on the door. "5 minutes, sir." Keanu looked up. "Call me Keanu." "I'm not a sir." Jordan smiled nervously. "Right, Keanu. Are you ready?" Keanu stood, calm as ever. "We'll find out." Meanwhile, In a separate room upstairs, the host sat alone. He'd shaved twice, paced too much, and read too many. Angry emails from people who'd once adored him. He had agreed, under pressure, to issue a public apology. But his heart wasn't in it. Not yet. He still believed it was all overblown, until he saw the live audience. The moment he stepped onto the stage and looked into the crowd, something hit him. Not a sound, not a boo, just eyes. So many of them. Not angry, not hateful, just disappointed. It was the kind of silence that crushed more than noise ever could. The intro music played, the lights shifted, and the camera rolled. The host forced a smile and welcomed viewers back. "Tonight," he said, "we're joined again by someone who doesn't need an introduction. Mr. Keanu Reeves." Applause. Not the wild, screaming kind. The respectful kind. Keanu walked out slowly. When he sat down, the host cleared his throat and leaned forward, fingers interlocked. "Keanu, before we talk about anything else, I want to say something." The studio tensed. Every camera zoomed in. Every ear leaned closer. "I made a joke, on live TV, about your necklace, and about your faith. I did it without thinking, without understanding, and I've spent the last few days reading letters from people who made me realize I didn't just insult you, I insulted them." He paused, his voice cracked. "I'm sorry." Keanu didn't smile, but he nodded, and that nod felt like grace itself. "Thank you," Keanu said. "It takes strength to admit when we fall short." The host exhaled, relieved. But then came the unexpected. Keanu reached into his coat pocket and pulled out 3 letters. Handwritten, folded, aged. "Want to read something?" he said softly. "These aren't from fans. They're from people you'll never see on magazine covers. But they're the reason I came back." He read aloud a letter from a teenage girl who had been mocked for wearing her late father's cross to school. Then, one from a war veteran who said he wore his wife's necklace under his uniform through every mission and never once felt afraid. Then one from a single mother who said her son had stopped speaking after his dad's death. Until he saw that clip of Keanu on the show and said, "He wears one like Grandma's." The room was silent, and then came the moment that changed everything. Keanu turned to the host. "I'm not angry. I don't want revenge. I want to offer something more powerful." He reached down and unhooked the cross from around his neck. "This isn't a symbol of perfection. It's a reminder, to me, of love, of pain, of the people who shaped me." He held it out. "I want you to have it." The host froze. I can't. I don't deserve that." "It's not about deserving," Keanu said. "It's about remembering." The host hesitated, then reached forward with both hands and accepted it. For a brief second, his fingers trembled. The audience didn't clap. They couldn't. They were too stunned. But one person watching from the crowd was not frozen. The man in the black hoodie stood up quietly and began filming with a hidden mic clipped to his collar. He wasn't moved. He wasn't touched. He was calculating. His name was Mick. Years ago, he'd been a struggling actor. He'd met Keanu once, on a film set where Keanu had unknowingly been chosen over him for a minor role. But that role had led to Mick losing his agent, then his career, then his sanity. In his mind, Keanu was the symbol of everything stolen from him. And now, with the world watching, Mick had a plan, a secret, a video, a lie. One that, if released, could change the world's view of Keanu Reeves forever. And as he walked out of the studio that night, his thumb hovered over upload. The poison behind the lens. The next morning, the world woke up different. Clips from the second interview flooded every platform, but it wasn't the apology that held people's attention. It was the moment Keanu handed over his cross necklace. It was quiet, unscripted, sacred in a way that defied modern noise. Even the loudest critics couldn't deny it. Something real had happened on that stage. Something that pierced deeper than fame or opinion. People shared the clip not because It was trending, but because it made them feel seen. Old war vets reposted it with trembling hands. Grieving children whispered about it at breakfast tables. Families who hadn't prayed in years lit candles that night, not because of religion, but because they needed to believe in something good again. But while the world was being stirred by grace, Mick sat alone in a dim apartment, his laptop glowing, like a cruel spotlight in the dark. The air was thick with bitterness. Empty takeout boxes lay scattered across the floor, and a wall of rejection letters curled at the edges under old thumbtacks. His eyes didn't blink as he watched the video he was about to release. It was footage no one had seen before. It showed Keanu in a parking lot late at night, years ago. He was speaking to someone, animated, frustrated. His voice was raised, and then a shove. Nothing brutal, but it was enough. The video was grainy, filmed from behind a dumpster. Mick's voice could be heard faintly, taunting, provoking. But the video ended before context could breathe. The file was titled "The Real Keanu Reeves." Mick hovered over the upload button. His breath was shallow, his heartbeat wild. He clicked post. Within minutes, the internet split apart. Headlines screamed, "Was Keanu always this calm?" New video reveals violent side. Heart. Of gold or Hollywood act? It didn't matter that the clip lacked context. It didn't matter that it was nearly a decade old. It didn't matter that Keanu hadn't even thrown a punch. It was enough to cast doubt. And in a world starving for heroes but quick to crush them, doubt was all it took. Keanu's phone lit up in waves. Messages poured in. His manager panicked. Publicists offered prepared statements. Media outlets requested interviews. Some demanded apologies for something not yet understood. But Keanu didn't answer his phone. He was in a small hospital in Pasadena, visiting a boy named Jonas, one of the letter writers. The boy had a rare condition that left him in constant pain. His mother had reached out privately, saying Keanu's words had given Jonas strength on nights when even breathing felt like a battle. Keanu sat beside him, holding the boy's tiny hand, telling him stories about motorcycles and stars, and how sometimes silence could be the loudest sound in the world. Jonas smiled weakly. "Will you wear the necklace again someday?" Keanu hesitated. Maybe someone else will. As he stepped out of the room, his manager found him, face pale. "You need to see this." Keanu watched the clip. He didn't flinch, didn't defend, didn't curse. He simply whispered. He kept it all these years. "We need to issue a response," his manager urged. "We can explain." Keanu raised a hand. "No, we wait. Truth doesn't need panic." But not everyone had his patience. The host, still carrying the necklace, went live on his own channel, visibly shaken. "I know the Keanu who sat in front of me twice. I know what that necklace meant. I don't believe this video proves anything. And if you think it does, you weren't listening to who he is. You were looking for someone to hate." Some people applauded. Others accused him of being fooled. The internet churned. But behind the noise, a quiet figure began to dig deeper. Jordan, the young producer, hadn't stopped thinking about the moment Keanu read those letters. Something in his gut told him the video wasn't right. The timeline didn't match. The angle was too intentional. He began tracing it, frame by frame. He froze on one image, a reflection in a car mirror behind Keanu, a face, Mick's face, and then it hit him. Jordan remembered that name, an old casting dispute, whispers around studios, a man who'd claimed he was robbed by Keanu, who blamed him for everything. It was all coming together. He sent the still frame to the legal team. "This wasn't leaked," Jordan said. "It was planted, and the man behind it, he's not done yet." Because while the world argued online, Mick was already planning part 2. He hadn't just uploaded a video, he had more footage, fabricated conversations, clipped audio, a trail of lies sewn together with just enough truth to make the world pause. He didn't want money. He wanted destruction. And in his mind, he was just getting started. Echoes that can't be erased. The world was unraveling at the edges. Not in war, not in fire, but in whispers. Viral shadows spreading faster than facts could keep up. The second video surfaced 3 days after the first. This time, it showed Keanu walking out of a bar years ago, brushing off a woman who seemed to be reaching out to him. The clip was angled, distorted, with captions someone added that read, "Cold-hearted, arrogant, fake." It was clearly edited, but to those hungry to believe the worst, it looked like proof. The hashtags turned colder. Keanu lied gown cross and cover. Not so humble, people began to question everything. Was the necklace real? Were the letters staged? Was the kindness just another role? Mick watched it all from the darkness of his apartment, not with joy, but with vindication. To him, the silence of success had always sounded like betrayal. He'd built his bitterness, one rejection at a time, convinced that the world had chosen Keanu instead of him. And now, finally, the scales were tipping, but not everyone believed the noise. In a small community center in Colorado, a woman named Diane gathered a group of teens she worked with. Many of them had been in and out of foster homes, never knowing peace, never seeing kindness that lasted. She played the original clip, the interview with the cross necklace. Then, she showed the new ones. Afterward, she turned off the screen and asked, "Which one do you believe is real?" A girl with sharp eyes, barely 16, answered without flinching. "You can't fake what he said when nobody clapped. He didn't need a camera for that moment. That was real." Others nodded. Truth has a scent, and even through the fog of manipulated pixels, some could still smell it. Meanwhile, Jordan sat in the studio's basement archives, surrounded by tape reels, folders, and storage drives. He wasn't looking for more footage. He was looking for pattern. Mick's name kept surfacing. Minor film sets, auditions, arguments. In every story there was resentment. And in more than one, there was a trail of manipulation. Then Jordan found it, an old phone interview recorded off-air. Mick, drunk, talking to a producer, ranting about Keanu. "He's not even talented. He just got lucky. I swear one day I'll show them all what kind of saint he isn't." Jordan froze. It wasn't much, but it was enough to plant a doubt in reverse, enough to open a door. He took it to Keanu. The two met in a quiet garden outside the city, far from reporters. Birds fluttered in the trees, oblivious to scandal. Keanu listened silently as Jordan explained everything, the false edits, the grudge, the recordings. When Jordan finished, he waited. Expected rage, maybe frustration. Instead, Keanu leaned back against the wooden bench, eyes distant. "I knew someone was filming that night," Keanu said softly. "I didn't shove him out of anger. I stopped him from harassing a waitress. He was drunk, aggressive. I told him to back off. He wouldn't. I pushed him away. That's all." Jordan sat stunned. "Why didn't you say anything before?" "Because I thought it didn't matter. I thought maybe silence would protect him from himself." "Him?" Keanu nodded. "He had talent once. I saw it. But something broke in him. Maybe I reminded him of what he lost." Jordan didn't know what to say. Keanu stood and looked out at the fading sun. "I'll tell my story," he said at last. "But not to clear my name, to clear the fog." The next day, Keanu agreed to a live town hall interview. No scripts, no audience cues, no press fluff, just real people, real questions, real time. The studio was hesitant, so was the network. But Keanu didn't budge. He asked for Jordan to moderate. And one condition, no edits. The hour arrived. People tuned. In from around the globe, millions waited, unsure what to believe anymore, unsure what they wanted from this man who once gave away a necklace and now stood under suspicion. Jordan opened the session with no fanfare. "Keanu, the floor is yours." And Keanu began, He didn't dodge. He didn't perform. He explained everything, what really happened in that parking lot. What the cross meant. What forgiveness cost him. And how sometimes, even when you're right, staying silent can let the wrong story grow. "I'm not a perfect man," he said. "I've made mistakes. I've walked away when I should have spoken up. But I've never raised my hand in hatred. I've never used my voice to wound, and I'll never wear this cross like a costume." The crowd watching didn't cheer. They didn't need to. Something inside them settled, like a stone finding the bottom of a river. Then Keanu turned to the camera. "This isn't about me anymore. It's about us. What kind of world are we trying to build? One where stories are twisted in secret rooms? Or one where we look each other in the eyes and listen?" That's when a small notification appeared on Jordan's monitor. Mick had been arrested, a waitress had come forward. The same one from the parking lot. She confirmed Keanu's story, unaware of the media storm, unaware of the damage Mick had tried to cause. She just remembered one thing clearly. That night, the man who helped me wore a necklace and said, "Some things are worth protecting, even if no one claps for it." Keanu said nothing when he heard the news. He just bowed his head and smiled. But the story wasn't over, because the necklace had one more journey to make. The necklace finds its home, days passed. The storm faded, as all storms do. The headlines shifted to other scandals, other faces. The internet grew quiet. But what stayed behind was not the noise. It was the stillness Keanu had left in his wake, the kind that sits in people's hearts long after the screens go dark. Not a performance, not a campaign, just a man who spoke with truth when it would have been easier to stay silent, and chose mercy when he could have sought revenge. Keanu didn't return to interviews. He didn't sign new deals. Instead, he began showing up in unexpected places. Not with cameras, but with presence. He visited a halfway home in Chicago, where a young boy named Elijah clutched a wooden cross. He carved himself after seeing Keanu's story. He didn't speak for the first few minutes Keanu was there. He just looked up with wide, knowing eyes and whispered, "Thank you for not giving up." Keanu smiled. "I almost did." Elijah nodded. "Me too. Another week. Another city." This time, Keanu stood outside a shelter in New Orleans. A woman named Diane, the same counselor who had played his clip to a room full of broken teenagers, embraced him as if she were seeing an old friend. Her students gathered around, quiet at first, then one by one began to open up. One of them, a girl named Tyra, removed a tiny chain from her wrist and placed it in Keanu's hand. "It's not gold or anything," she said, "but it was my mama's. Now I think maybe you should have it." He didn't take it. He wrapped her fingers back around it and said gently, "You carry your story. Not for me, for the next girl who thinks she's alone." Word spread, quietly, of these moments. No press, no viral videos. Just people who were changed and people who were healing. And somewhere in that silent wave of truth, something else began to grow. Not fandom, not fame, faith. But there was one last story to finish. Sarah, the little girl from the shelter who had written letters to Keanu, tucking them into her church's prayer book, still didn't know if he'd ever seen them. She still wrote every Sunday. One line always stayed the same. "I hope your necklace still reminds you to be kind." One Sunday morning, the priest stood at the altar with something in his hands. A small package, carefully wrapped. No note. Just a label for Sarah. She opened it slowly. Inside was a cross, old, worn, silver faded with time, and carved faintly on the back were 3 small words, "Keep the light." Sarah gasped. She knew this necklace. It was the one, his, the priest smiled. "It came by courier, no return address." Tears filled her eyes. She clutched it to her chest like it was breath itself. That night, she prayed not for something new, but in gratitude. Because somehow, someone who had stood in front of the whole world chose to see her. In a small apartment far from Hollywood, Keanu sat alone, watching the stars from his window. He no longer wore the necklace, but he didn't need to. He had given it away not to let go of the past, but to let someone else carry it forward. His phone buzzed once, an image sent anonymously by Jordan. It showed Sarah at the church, cross-E, around her neck, standing at the front pew, with the biggest smile on her face. Keanu didn't respond. He just whispered to the empty room. It found her. And maybe that was the whole story after all. Not the fame, not the insult, not even the redemption, but the journey of a simple object passed hand to hand, wound to wound, heart to heart. The necklace had never been about religion. It had always been about remembrance. Remembrance of those we've loved, of the kindness we owe, of the power in quiet strength, and the sacredness of choosing love when cruelty seems easier. Keanu closed his eyes. Somewhere out there, someone else would carry the light now, and for once the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt holy.